So hello everyone, welcome to this brand new series on Introduction to Data Structures and Algorithms by Google DSC. So I'm Karan Singh, I'm technical team member at Developer Student Clubs at ASCB, and I'm a second year student at our college. So today's objectives are introduction to data structures, then we'll briefly see introduction to memory, then we'll go to introduction to, and then we'll briefly see what vectors are and how they are different from our conventional arrays. So what are data structures? Now data structures are a particular way of organizing data in a computer. So basically we need to, like, in computer science we usually deal with data, right? So in order to organize the data in the most efficient and optimized form, we need data structures. And in data structures basically we work on implementing like most of this course will be about implementing the non-primitive types of data structures using the primitive types. And basically data structures are used everywhere. For example, if you want to code your machine learning algorithms from scratch, you'll be requiring a lot of data structures. Similarly, one famous example is, let's take say Google Maps. Now Google Maps is built on a data structure called graph, and there are many algorithms like breadth first search and depth first search, etc., and different algorithms that are used by Google Maps. And similarly, let's consider our operating system. In our operating system also there are many implementations of data structures like stacks or queues or say many linked lists and even hash maps. So basically our data structures are of two types: primitive data structures and non-primitive. Now primitive are the predefined data structures that are available in any programming language. So in this course we'll be following C++, and in C++ we have primitive data structures like int, character, float or boolean. And similarly non-primitive are of forms like arrays, classes and structures. And also we can implement our own non-primitive data structures. For example, we can implement queues, we can implement stacks using structures and classes and pointers and many many functionalities that C++ offers. So, as I explained, data structures are broadly can be classified into two categories: primitive data structures and non-primitive data structures. So, our primitive data structures in C++ are integer, floats, character, pointers, and similarly non-primitives are arrays, lists, and files. Arrays are basically we'll cover array in this lecture, and lists are of various forms like linear lists, non-linear lists, and these are the topics that our course will mostly focus on in the later stages, and it is the most important topic: implementing stacks, queues, graphs, trees, and traversing them, and implementing various algorithms on these data structures. So now let's talk about memory. What is memory? So when we say the word memory, we usually talk about the random access memory, or the RAM, popularly known as, which is our computer's main memory and is directly accessible by CPU. So basically, it is used to read, write data, and CPU can. It is a volatile form of memory. So therefore, if let's say there is a power cut, the data that's stored in the RAM at that instance will be lost. It's not like your conventional hard disk where the data is non-volatile in nature. So RAM is actually a fast form of memory, and usually when you load a program in your operating system, the operating system allots some part of its RAM to the program. Like now, I'll explain it to you using using diagrams. Okay, let's say you try to run a C++ program. So basically what your operating system will do, it will consider the C++ program as a process. So, and each process is allotted a fixed amount of memory. Okay. Now just consider this structure and consider each of this block to represent 1 byte of data. Not data, I mean 1 byte of storage. Okay. So basically each box can store 1 byte of data. And each of these boxes have an address, and this address is fixed, and basically these boxes are the are the empty space that can be utilized by our program while implementing various functions. So I'll explain this in a bit detail. So you all know we declare variables using in C++ in this style, right? Write int sum, int x, int y. So I've declared three variables x sum, x and y. I'll cover what int is. For now, just consider it to be a data type which stores int values. So basically, when I say int sum semicolon, I'm saying that sum is a variable which can store int values. What are int values? Integer values like zeros, 1, 2, 3, negative 1, 2, 3, and all those integer forms that we all are familiar with since our high school. So now what happens in our memory when we tell the compiler int sum semicolon. So what our compiler does is it randomly takes a box from the memory map and it assigns that box to that variable. So now, for example, this box with the address 1 has become is the property of the variable sum now. So whatever sum does, it will do indirectly through this box itself. So whenever we are using sum, we are using this location in the memory. Similarly, x and y have been allotted their own boxes, and now I'll show you how these operations, what kind of operations we can do. Like just excuse all the irregularities in the diagram. I used MS Paint to make this diagram, so there might be some asymmetries. Yeah, so now let's say after like we just declared the variables, right? Now let's use them. Now I write that sum is equal to 35 a semicolon. So I have told the compiler to store 35 in the location which is with the to in the location the sum where the sum is allotted to that the sum is allotted to. So basically when I write sum is equal to 35, the integer 35 gets stored in that location. Okay. Similarly, 21 x equal to 21 says that we will be storing the integer 21 in the location allotted to x and 32 in the location allotted to y. As we can see, this is the memory map, these are the addresses, these are the variable names, and this is the data that we'll deal with in programming, and we have allotted the data to this like these boxes. Now what happens when we do some operations? Like I write sum is equal to x plus y. So our x was 21 and y was 32, but our sum was some other number, right? Previously x was 21, y was 32, and there was 35 stored in the location pointed by sum. So now when I write sum is equal to x plus y, what basically is happening, there's an operation being performed, and now 30, the integer sum of 32 and 21 has been overwritten in the location pointed by sum. So sum's location has the number 53 now. So basically, like I just so basically my objective was to show you how we deal with the memory, and this is really important because in C++ we'll be using concepts like pointers, dynamic allocation, or stuff like that, where we'll be dealing with memory. And the fact that C++ allows us to deal with memory directly is the reason why C++ is so fast and powerful. Like you must have seen Python where you don't have to declare variables like this. In Python, you don't have to specify that sum will store only int kind of values, or x will store only integer kind of values or character kind of values. So basically, Python wastes a lot of memory in that process because you can store anything in it. But the fact that we can store only integer values in these variables helps us to optimize our memory allocation. Now we'll cover what data types are. So basically, primitive data types are basically the predefined data types and can be directly used by the user to declare variables. That is integer, character, float, and boolean. What I mean by directly being what it means by directly being declared by the user is that you can directly say int x semicolon and x will be declared as an integer. Similarly with character and floating point. But when we go forward in this course, you'll understand the meaning of the statement when we go forward in the course and we deal with advanced forms of data structures. So yeah. So what is an integer? I had like we used integer variable just now. It is just a keyword which just says that the data that we are storing can be from the range this to this. This is basically int min and int max, and I'll like we'll see this. We'll see this. So basically, this is just theory. Like this is just theory. This it talks about what integers are, what characters are. Now, one important thing here is that an integer that is int takes 4 bytes of memory. Okay, so when we from the RAM that we have allotted the program, 4 bytes of memory will always be allocated to an integer variable if we use the int x semicolon in our program. So basically, when we write int x semicolon, x has been allocated 4 bytes of memory from our available RAM. Character is a data type which stores all the character variables. Now, variables are character constants are basically like A, B, C, or say even 1, 2, 3, or basically single digit characters that are available on your keyboard, and they take only 1 byte of data. So this is okay. So 1 byte of data from the memory space will be allocated to a character when we say character X and semicolon. Similarly, we have floating points. So floating points are take 4 bytes of memory space, and floating points basically deal with numbers with floating values. So basically, when we have decimal points in our data, we can use floating points. So for storing numbers like say 3.141 or 2.3 or numbers like that, when we have to deal with such numbers, we use floating points. And void is basically a empty data, like is an empty data type. Void means it's empty, so basically it does not have any kind of value. There are instances when void is used. Most common instances when we declare a function that has nothing to return. So basically, when function returns nothing, we declare it as void because it's returning nothing. But in case a function is returning int, that is an integer, so we declare it as int. So basically, I guess you guys might be knowing about what functions are. In case you don't, we'll be covering them. But in like I guess most probably you guys know all this stuff. So and these two things are boolean and double floating point. So double floating is similar to a floating type, but it has increased precision. So basically the precision increases, so basically it consumes more memory, so it requires 8 bytes of data. And boolean is a data type that is used to store true or false values. So basically, if you want to, we denote true as 1 and false as 0. So a boolean integer will store either 1 or 0, and it takes very less memory. I guess it takes just 1 byte. Okay, and these are modifiers. So modifiers are basically nothing but they are used to increase or decrease the range of our data type. So basically, if I specify a long integer, the range of that integer will increase, or a long double, the range of that double will increase. Similarly, I can reduce the range using short, and these are signed and unsigned. This we will cover in bit manipulation, but it is nothing. It's basically like unsigned means we'll never be using negative numbers, so we get more memory to store the numbers because we'll never have to store negative, right? So because we don't have to store negative numbers, so we'll have all our memory to store the positive numbers. You'll understand this when we'll be using bit manipulation, and it will be covered in a later lecture. Yeah. So that was theory. Now I want to explain you how integers are stored in memory exactly. So basically, consider this to be the memory map that we talked about in the earlier part of our lecture. And I told that we have each of these locations have an address, right? So just consider this to be an address like this, like 1320, 1321. Like consider these to be the addresses. Usually we store addresses in hexel form, but for simplicity, we'll be using integers to represent the addresses of the memory. So now let me explain you how integers are actually stored in the memory. So when you say when you tell the compiler int x semicolon, what we are telling to the compiler is that we are declaring a variable x that will store an integer value. Now each of these boxes represents one byte of memory, right? And we said earlier that an integer type requires 4 bytes of data. So basically, when we say int x semicolon, 4 bytes of this data, any randomly 4 contiguous locations of data of memory is reserved for this variable x. So these 4 locations are reserved for this variable x, and it won't be allocated to any of the other variables unless and until this program terminates or we delete this variable. So now, so 1322 to 1325 are the addresses that have been allocated to X, and basically these are 4 bytes 1, 2, 3, 4, and these are contiguous. It's important. You can't just allocate 1 byte from here and 1 byte from there because we need contiguous data for storing. And similarly, this is the memory map of character. So when you say char y semicolon, we want 1 byte to be reserved for y because characters take only 1 byte, so any of the 1 bytes will be reserved for this character y. For integers we require 4 bytes, but for characters we require only 1 byte, and this has been allocated. Okay, now we are going to the next concept, that is arrays. So what are arrays? Arrays are basically like, suppose let's take an example of a problem where you have to store all the roll numbers of your class. Okay, so in case there are 35 people in your class, if you don't use arrays, you'll be required to declare 35 different variables to store all the roll numbers. But we can do that simply by using arrays, because what arrays do is that they allocate contiguous memory locations for elements, and they can be accessed directly. What this means is that if I declare an array like this int ar5, I am allocating 5 boxes for my array that are contiguous, and each of these boxes store integer value. Similarly, character car6 implies that we have 6 boxes that can store character values, and they are contiguous in the memory. That is, there is no gap between them in the memory. For yeah, so this is the diagrammatic representation. So when I say char ar9, I get these nine locations in the memory that are contiguous, and I can store data in it. Like when I say arr of 0, 0 means we are referring to the index 0, that is the first box of our array, and we are allocating it with 40, so we have 40 stored in it. Similarly, we have arr1 equal to 55, so the second index in which we are storing the integer 55, and arr3 equal to 63. So basically, okay, there's a typo there. This should be arr2. So we'll store 63 in the box, and so on. So basically, we avoided the hassle of declaring so many variables, and we did that just using one line. So basically, this is the importance of arrays. It saves time and it is fast, and because it is contiguous, we can access one element from another with like, we can directly access, say, the data stored in integer location 5 from the location 0, which will not be possible if we declare them separately. This is a concept of pointers that I'll explain you probably in the next session. So these are basically arrays, and now we'll look at how arrays are, like, we previously looked at how integers are stored in the memory, right? Now we'll look at how arrays are stored in the memory. So this is our memory block. Each of these boxes represent 1 byte, and now when I say arr5, basically what I'm saying is I want 5 contiguous boxes that can store integer values. And you remember, right, that for storing integers we require 4 bytes. So basically what happens is we get these 4 bytes for storing the first index of the array. Similarly, the next 4 bytes for storing the second one. The next 4 bytes for storing the third for the array's integer in the third index of the array, and so on. So basically, we get contiguous memory allocation for our variable ARR, and each of them consists of 4 bytes. So this is how data is basically stored in the memory. Now we'll cover what vectors are. See, I wanted to cover this topic briefly because many people who start with C++, they don't know about vectors, and they see this vector a lot in on various websites. Like suppose you're solving a challenge on HackerRank or CodeChef, you'll see this vector declaration many times, and you'll get confused. Okay, so basically that's why I wanted to cover this. We'll have a detailed lecture on what all the standard template libraries are. Now vector is a part of the standard template library. So we'll cover that in one of the lectures. But what I wanted to tell in this lecture is that what exactly how vectors are different from arrays, and I just wanted to give you guys a brief idea about what vectors are. Okay, so they are basically dynamic arrays. Now, what we mean by dynamic is that we can resize them. We can resize them automatically. Let me explain. Suppose you declare an array. Let me go back. Now, suppose you declare an array like this. What happens is that you can't change the size of this array anymore. Once you've declared it as ARR5, so basically the compiler has allocated statically 5 locations for this array, and now you can't change the size of the array. Now, in case we have declared 35 integers for storing our roll number, an array of 35 integers to store a roll number, and suppose there's a student who joins late. Now we won't be able to add his roll number into our existing array. Now in order to add his new number, we'll have to declare a completely new array, and we'll have to repeat all the process again. But that is tedious. So and the reason we can't change is because the compiler allocates the memory statically. In order to overcome this problem, we use vectors. So when we declare vector int a, we are basically saying that a is a vector that can store integer values, and it is dynamic in nature. That is that suppose I want to resize this array, I mean this vector array, I can resize it easily without much hassle. But there are some trade-offs of using vector. Now we'll discuss what the trade-offs are. So basically, array stores fixed size of sequential collection as I explained, and vector is dynamic in nature, so the size increases. But vectors occupy more memory in our RAM. This is because vectors have a lot of operations that have been implemented. So in order to store those operations and the underlying data structures, that occupy more memory than our conventional arrays. You'll understand this when you implement data structures like linked list or stacks or queues, and this will be explained. You'll understand that more easily, and they also take more time in accessing elements. Like although they take constant time, but the thing is that in arrays we can access the elements directly, but in vector there are a lot of checks performed. Like many of checks are performed which slow down the process. So vectors take more memory and are more time consuming, but they are dynamic. So these are the trade-offs of using vectors over arrays. So you can, like in case you're solving a competitive programming program and you know that your algorithm is well optimized, and still if you get the time limit exceeding error, you can basically try that problem again by replacing all your vectors with arrays. There can be a significant decrease in speed in some cases where vectors are being used extensively in your program. Okay, so Shubham Garg is asking, are vectors better than linked lists? Okay, so Shubham, basically linked list, yeah. So what's the difference between linked list and vectors? Okay, let me explain. So linked lists are basically our implementation where we use classes, right? We use a class, we declare a node, and we usually use, I'll explain it with a diagram. Okay. Yeah, so this is our linked list. Okay, so what happens is that we basically declare a node, and we declare many nodes, and we store the address of this node in the previous location, right? So we have to traverse a lot. Okay, basically these are not contiguous. These are not contiguously stored in the memory. So in order to access say a node after 3 units of nodes, we'll have to traverse. But in vector, the implementation basically has arrays beneath it, so we can access the data directly in order one time. This will take order n time to access the data in other nodes. So this is one of the differences between linked lists and vectors. So what vectors do is that basically when we need to, okay, I'll explain you what implementation we use while making vectors. So in vectors, what we do is we basically implement an array. But say we run out of space, what we do is we declare a new array of double the size. We copy all the data and we start using that array again. So basically, we have the advantage of accessing the data at order one time. Only drawback being that when we need to increase the space, the vector might slow down. In linked list, though, increasing the memory is not a problem. It will increase in order one time, because what we need to do is basically create a new node and store the pointer to it in the last node, right? So, but the drawback is that in order to access data, we need to traverse a lot, which is not the case in vectors. And suppose in your competitive programming questions, you're trying to implement your own linked list. It may have some errors, or it might not be that well optimized. In that case, use the standard template library from vectors. Like, that will be better, unless and until they have specifically told you to implement the linked list from scratch. You can use vectors over linked lists. Okay, yeah, Akhilesh has a doubt. Dynamic memory allocation versus vectors, which is more efficient? Okay, Akhilesh, I suppose that your doubt is that if we dynamically allocate a pointer variable, and we dynamically allocate memory, right? Is that your doubt? Like, oh, basically, like, suppose int star a is equal to new integer 5. That is your doubt, right?
Actually, because see, if when we use vectors, that then maybe you said that increasing the size takes order n time, but if we dynamically allocate, it'll be more efficient, right?
Yes, dynamic allocation will be more efficient, but you can okay, in case of linked list, that is more efficient. Why? Because we can dynamically increase the memory, but uh, but but then again, in linked list you have to traverse it, right? And in arrays also, suppose you declare an array dynamically by saying that int star arr is equal to new integer 5. So basically we are allocating 5 integer locations dynamically. But at the end of the day, you can't increase the size again, because you have declared it once, and now you can't increase the size, because the compiler, although it has allocated the memory dynamically, but it has allocated the fixed amount. It loses it doesn't our compiler doesn't keep the track of the addresses where these from where the memory was allocated. So if we again try to increase it, we won't be having that address. So basically, vectors. That is the reason we use vectors, because what we basically do is we declare a new array of double the size, and we copy the data from the previous array. So in that case, if in your problem you require a fixed size of array, then dynamic memory allocation will be faster than vectors. But in case you want to keep scope of a situation where you might need to increase the size of your array or something, then vectors is better, because although dynamic array will provide you speed, but then vectors will provide you more features, basically features, and increasing the memory is more easy. Oh yeah, okay. So Doiban, yeah, we can implement vectors. We can easily implement the vectors manually. Basically, we have to use the concept of, like, if suppose you know how we implement linked lists. Similarly, we can implement vectors. You know, like we need to implement a class where we initialize a array of, say, size 1, and when we require to add data, basically we what we'll have to do is we'll have to call a function which creates a new array, copies the data and makes it as our primary array. Similarly, whenever we need to increase the size, we'll have to create a new array of double that size. That will basically help us in get, like, that is the basic implementation of vectors. So we can do it manually, that's not an issue. We can implement that manually. If you want, we can do that in one of the sessions. But you can do that, but okay, so won't that be slower? Like, slower in what sense? Like, what will be slow? Accessing data will be slower or expanding will be slower? Okay, yeah. Expanding, yes, it will be slower. If you use a linked list, the expanding will not take much time. It will take constant time. Vector will take more time in expanding, but the trade-off is that accessing data will be way too fast. Okay, so in linked list, accessing data is slow because we'll have to traverse. But in
So
vectors,
so
yeah,
basically, both of them have different strong points. Like they're similar but have different strong points. Like one accessing is faster and one expanding is faster.
yes, and now it depends on your problem, whether your problem is more focused on expanding or more focused on, accessing.
Okay, okay,
But
got it.
but generally, what happens is in a C++, in any, like, let's take a code chef contest for example. What happens is that they will declare a problem, and they and on the bottom of the declaration, it will be written that the expected time to complete this problem is 1 second. Okay, irrespective of what programming language you use. Okay, so because C++ is already so well optimized, even expanding arrays will be way too faster than, say, if you use Python or something. Even though you implement linked lists in Python, but even then C++ will be faster than that because it is more optimized because it directly communicates with the memory. So in that case, if practically, if you are, like, now, ideally linked list will be a better implementation, but in a coding contest, I would suggest to use vectors because first of all, it will decrease your errors because in your linked list, suppose if there is an error, then that will reflect in your problem. But vectors are already, we can import vectors easily, and they are allowed to be, like, they are allowed. Okay, they are an integral part of C++ in late 1990s. So basically, it will reduce our errors, and because C++ is already so fast, we'll not face issues of, you know will not run out of time if you are using C++.
Okay, got it.
Okay, guys, any other doubts?
One doubt: how would the speed compare when you're manually implementing the vector and with already? I mean, we already have a template class. So how would the speed matter that way? How
Okay,
would
so
it be different?
yeah, so in the template class, they have okay, so they have not taken specific situation in mind. They have created the vector generally. Okay, what I mean is that they have implemented a lot of security checks and stuff like that. Suppose we manually implement the vector, we can avoid those security checks. So our speed of accessing will basically become equal to the speed of accessing of, native arrays. But if we use the template class, there will be a lot of check performance. Although the access time will be order 1, but due to the checks, the time will reduce. But C++ is optimized, as I said, so that usually will never be a problem in like in a ideally it can be a problem, but we are not in ideal world, right? Basically, they don't, like, they give you a certain time limit, and usually vectors won't cause you problem with that because it's an optimized language. So basically, yeah. So STL will take some time more because of the security checks and stuff like that, and calculate, like, they also check bounds and stuff, which we can avoid while implementing our own class. So we don't have to check the security of our implementation. That will make it faster. That's the only thing while using SQL.
So the fastest way basically would be to implement this vectors manually, right?
In case you want to use vectors, and if you care only about speed, like
Yeah.
basically you care about raw speed, then yeah, implement them manually.
There's nothing faster than this.
As far as I know, this is the fastest way. Yeah, you can do other stuff like suppose you know the range of your integers. You can use short int, so basically less memory will be used. And
So
yeah, I mean like
basically, to get faster than this, we just need memory optimization. That's all.
not memory more optimization exactly. Yeah, you can optimize memory further, and basically yeah, just don't implement those security checks that are available in the standard template library. Basically it will be the
Okay.
fastest, that will be the fastest way. And I yeah, that's fastest, I guess. You can't really, even if you can, then depending on your processor or say temperature of your room and stuff like that, it might change. But yeah, that's negligible, that's literally negligible. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Thanks.